The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
You are listening or watching with the Instructor Podcast 6 for 60. As always, I am your relatively mediocre host, Terry Cook. I am joined by 6 of the finest trainers in the whole land. And just to clarify, 6 of the finest, not the 6 finest. So please, no one jump on and complain in the comments. But we are recording this on Driving Instructor Day. So happy Driving Instructor Day, everyone. I hope you've all had a good day. But I do want to mention that I think we have officially made it. Driving Instructor Day has officially made it because we have been celebrated and shared by none other than WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there you go.
I don't think it gets better than that. I think Driving Instructor Day is official. So we've got people watching, we've got people in the chat. So hello to everybody that is watching. So if you haven't come across 6 for 60 before, basically, as I say, I've got 6 of the finest trainers in the whole land. They will get 60 seconds to answer a question each, some of which have been submitted by the fine folks in this group, and some are from me. But I like to give I will just say they've had opportunity to read the questions first. Not all of them do, and you may be able to tell which ones do by the end of the episode. But I like to ask a no context question first. Which is basically just a nice opportunity because they haven't heard this before. So for this one, what I want is a recommended resource. So I want no context, I want no explanation as to why you're recommending this resource, and it can't be your own resource. So Chris, you cannot recommend the Chris Bensted podcast. It has to any resource, but it can't be your own, and all I want is the resource. So we're going to come to you first, Lee. What's your recommended resource for driving instructors?
I would say, I wish I'd have had more time to think of it because everyone's going to be in the comments going, who's going to say Bob? Yeah, client-centered learning.
Oh, bless you.
I'm so predictable.
Bob, what would your recommended resource be?
It would be the book An Introduction to Coaching, 2nd edition, Christian van Nieuwberg, or anything done by these fine individuals you see on the screen.
Neil.
I would say practical teaching skills. And again, I'm going to echo that anything done by these fine individuals on the screen.
You're all being too nice. Phil.
Anything done by Sam Harper, I would go for. And obviously everyone in the room. Blah, blah, blah.
Chris.
Dave Shannon, Are You Ready for Business?
And Emma.
This is a very fine podcast.
I like that one best. So yes,
You didn't pay me, by the way.
But some awesome resources there. So for anyone watching, I mean, you don't even need to watch this. You can switch off and go and check them out. I think you're sorted there. Some good quality stuff. But let's jump in to the first question proper. Now this one was sent.
Phil.
Did I not ask Phil?
Yeah, I said Sam Harper. Anything from Sam Harper. Thanks for listening, Bob.
I'm only messing with you.
You blocked him again.
Yeah.
Is that your last drink of the night, Bob? Yeah. All right. So first question, and this was sent in by Nick Smith. Now I've tweaked it slightly, but we're going with it. So should manoeuvres, in particular parallel parking, be removed from driving tests? So your first for this one, Lee. Should manoeuvres, in particular parallel parking, be removed from driving tests?
No, I think they should stay where they are. I think it's a very good exercise to assess someone's ability to control a car. You know, can they control a car and allow for time for other things like effective observation and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's good for that. Plus, with households kind of having more cars, parallel parking in particular is a really good skill for drivers to have. The more new drivers have prangs, then the more insurance premiums are going to go up for everyone. So yeah, no, thank you. I think we'll keep it where it is and get everyone really good at it before they pass the test.
Everyone really good at it. Always a good idea. I will just say as well that anyone watch along, you can use the comments, you can answer the questions yourself, and you can ask questions to the guys who won't be doing it now, but they are in the group, so they can potentially bob back on later. So we're going to bob back on later. There you go. We're going to come to you next, Bob. Same question. Should manoeuvres, in particular parallel parking, be removed from the tests?
Well, I think the right reverse pulling up on the right and reversing back was a thing that when they first brought it in, I thought, why are they doing that? And they explained it as well. It's a real life skill. And I thought, yeah. But I think I'm a fan of it now. And I think it does show that they can handle the car in a higher risk situation, which is sort of normal life. So, yeah, I think they should stay in.
Excellent. So we are going to come again over to you, Neil, next. Same question.
I think, and being quite controversial, I think they shouldn't have took the others out before. So they should have 7 manoeuvres in there, really, to test everybody's skill. Yeah, so if you can reverse around a corner left and right, pull up and park on the right, parallel park, bay park both ways, it's got to be better, surely, to test somebody's skill than just 3 or 4 to choose from.
Might help with waiting times too,
I like it. I didn't tell you guys this before. I'm ranking your answers tonight, and so far you're my favourite, Neil. But we are coming to you next, Phil. So again, should manoeuvres, in particular parallel parking, be removed from driving tests?
No, because unfortunately we are very test focused in this industry, and I think you remove the parking, no one teaches it. Just like when they started doing bay parking in actual car parks, there were certain people at certain test centers were like, oh, now I've got to start teaching this. So yeah, unfortunately, no, because there'll be a select group of instructors that carry on teaching them, but not everyone. I'd like to actually see it expanded a little bit as well, so that it's between 2 parked cars when possible, and potentially also on the right hand side when suitable, so that we're not just doing a sterilized version of it.
I like it. That's good. Not quite overtaking Neil's answer, but it's close second. No offense to the other guys. And no pressure, by the way. Chris, you're next.
I'd love to live in a world where we can get rid of them. But as Phil said, if we did, probably no one would do them. And they wouldn't be taught to a decent level, because we're incredibly test focused, and that's where we end up. So during the reign of the minimum standards industry, sadly, they need to be there. I'd like to see the taxi approach that we used to have on the taxi test, which is, right, you're here, you've got to go the other way, figure it out. I think that a dynamic risk assessment approach would be my preference. And we know that they can't include the U-turn because only the DVSA are allowed to do those.
Slightly annoyed to say this, but I've got a new favourite answer, so I'm going to stop doing the judging game now. So we'll move on. Last but not least, Emma, are you going to kind of line up everyone else and say no, or do you think they should be removed?
I'm going to go back to my very first driving test as an instructor, and my pupil got parallel park on that test, and I'll never, ever forget what the examiner said at the end. And he said to her that it was a really good display for a test, and that anybody can drive a car fast, but only a good driver can do a manoeuvre. And it's always stuck with me that there's a skill to driving and in control, whether it be manoeuvring or whatever. So no, I don't think they should be taken out. I do get people's frustration with parallel parking. Sometimes it can be time consuming finding a car that's suitable to go and practice, particularly if it's like first attempt or whatever. But no, I think it should stay in.
I like it. Some good answers there, even if we all agreed, which is completely fine. So let's move on to question 2 then. Now, this has been submitted by the incredibly handsome and ridiculously intelligent Terry Cook. And it is, well, in fact, just before I get into this, just a reminder to everyone that the Instructor Podcast Season 7 returns tomorrow. So if you're watching this live, make sure yes, I like whooping noises, feel free. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed so it drops into your feed first thing tomorrow morning. I've had some great feedback from the premium members already, which is lovely, including yourself, Phil. Posted a lovely comment over there, which is great. So very much looking forward to getting that out. If you are listening to this later on the podcast, then make sure you click subscribe. Anyway, but who has been your favourite guest on the Instructor Podcast and why? So kicking off for you this time, Bob. Who's been your favourite guest on the Instructor Podcast and why?
I spent ages this afternoon trawling back through the previous episodes, and there's so many. It is hard to pick a favourite, but I think I enjoyed Fiona's one about working with with the deaf. That was a fascinating because it's an area that I didn't really know anything about. And James McAleer, his one about his struggles with cancer was also a fascinating one. But there's been so much great stuff. My normal answer to that would be something that was outside of driving instruction, because there's been some phenomenal stuff that's worth listening to and that makes sense for us. But they're the two. That's as far as I could narrow it.
I'll settle for two. And I'm kind of pleased you didn't say anyone here. You went out of the comfort zone and said someone else, which is good. So we're going to come to you, Neil, next. Again, who's been your favourite guest on the podcast and why?
Yeah, I don't really know if I can pick a favourite one, to be quite honest, because I'm a bit like Bob. There's so much out there, or there's so much been done and so much talked about, that I think they're all really interesting, and it depends on the person that's looking at them and watching, and what they're taking and what they're putting into their teaching and that. So I couldn't really choose, to be quite honest.
You've let me down, Neil.
It is interesting to note, isn't it, that if you look at that, 159 episodes now. So if you averaged it out at 10 quid per session for CPD, some are worth tons more than that. Some you might think are only worth the 5. That's 1,500 quid worth of CPD you've had for bugger all.
Yep.
Indeed. What I will say, actually, as we're doing this, if anyone wants to say their favourite guest in the comments, feel free, because we've had one already shouting for Bob Morton. So, feel free to
thank you very much.
Your favourite guest. Phil, you're next. Who's been your favourite guest on the podcast?
So, like Bob, I went scrolling through the previous episodes earlier today, and equally found it really difficult to find a favourite, and also made me want to go back and listen to a few, because I couldn't remember what was on them. So I think I'm going to re-binge listen to the instructor podcast. Because I couldn't find a favourite with all those sort of kind of self-helpy ones, I think they all sort of kind of help me in different ways. I've chosen the Graham O'Brien one with the DVSA because, one, I think it was just a refreshing talk from the DVSA, and also because I think you handled that interview really well, Terry. And then just for my last 15 seconds, and I know you didn't want to pick someone in the room, but also Lee's, because I resonated with it quite well. I think that was one of the first episodes that I really sort of went, oh, that's like my story.
We're giving praise kind of to the DVSA. They almost, surely this isn't allowed. Almost praise the DVSA. Who's next? We've got Chris. You're up next. Who's been your favourite on the podcast?
We'll balance it out now. No, I was going to say that the DVSA one was one of my favourites. As the person who refuses to read the questions before we do this, and has the worst memory for names, this is fun. So yeah, no, the DVSA one's the first one that springs to mind. Not because of them, because of how Terry handled it, and I thought it was done incredibly well. And then other ones, Dan Meredith's I enjoyed. I like his approach to things. And then anything that I'm on, but not because I'm on it, because I get to kind of listen to whoever else is around and be engaged in conversation. And I like that. It stops me shouting at the podcast. So it's just from that perspective, because otherwise I kind of feel slightly lonely. So, but no, I would say, yeah, the DVSA one's probably the one that jumps to mind for me.
You once asked me, who was that guy that came on that spoke about business?
Yes.
That was how helpful that's been. All right, so Emma, you're up next. Who's been your favourite guest? And if you can do a name and not who was that guy that once spoke about business, that'd be great.
Again, for me, it was same as what the other guys said. It's difficult to go back and pinpoint, because there's favourites for different things. So in the end, I did go with 2. I'm sorry. I went with San and Sophie, and that's just because that really sort of sits in the stuff that really lights me up. So it's the stuff that really gets me and engages me, because it's where I am as well, and the stuff I'm pushing for. So yeah, San and Sophie for me.
Good shouts all around so far. And last but by no means least, Lee.
I really enjoyed Rob Cooling's episode. I'd never thought about getting an electric car until I listened to Rob's episode, and then I got an electric car. He sold it to me in like that one episode. But there's been so many awesome guests, that I've loved as well. I think I've taken so much personally from the Instructor podcast. The biggest take was the concept of diversifying my revenue streams, and it kind of really opened up my eyes and kind of made me think about, what could I do apart from just in-car training, and that led to the ADI and the PDI doctor stuff that I do on Zoom. But I think there's so many good episodes, like a lot of people have said, and none of them are bullshit. Because there's so many PDIs in our industry at the moment who listen to Karen on Facebook instead of understanding stuff properly, reading criteria. So it's really important that stuff like the Instructor podcast is around for everyone.
I like it. And I will just say, you mentioned the ADI doctor there. Out of all the names in the industry, I think the ADI or PDI doctor is my favorite. I don't know why. I just think it's a cracking little name. I will say this, actually, and I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to, so whatever. There is only one episode that I regret doing in all of them. I'm not going to name it. I'm not going to be that harsh. But there's only one, and maybe I'll tell you off air when I've stopped recording. One episode, you're welcome to guess, by the way, but I won't tell you. But I will also tell you my favourite. So I don't normally answer this question, but I will say, right back on season 1, it was Chris Brooker. And I won't tell you the reasons why, but he was my favourite episode so far. That was right back on season 1. So that was a question from the ever delightful Terry Cook. So let's move on to a question from the ever delightful Becky Seaton, who says, if you had a magic wand, what would you change about the industry and why? So were you first this time, Neil? What are you going to change about the industry with your magic wand?
I'm going to privatize the industry, take it away completely and let somebody else run it. So it can all come back to normal and everybody can be happy. It's, I think it's got stagnant at the minute, to be honest, and it needs a bit of a shake up. It needs a change. And there's loads of people out there that could do that. And there's quite a lot of good people on this room that could do that now. But it needs privatising, I think, to be quite honest.
Privatising it. Who would you pick from this room, Neil, to spearhead it?
Probably all 7 of us, yeah.
I'm going to make it off the fence at some point on this episode. Bill, we're coming to you next. If you had your magic wand out and you're waving it about, what are you changing?
So I'm going to refer back to my previous answer of the fact we're quite test focused. So I think if we need to change something in the industry, changing the tests will change the way instructors potentially go about their business. So I'd change both tests. I'd change the L test. I'd make it a longer test, more of an assessment and positive. So we're not looking for faults, but we're looking for good driving, because I think that would change the way instructors go about their lessons. And I would change the part 3 and standards check to come away from being sort of kind of scene where you have to go and fix faults, and I get there is parts that it's not, and more about dealing with the person that is next to you, and dealing with their emotions, thoughts, feelings. And I think there should be more bonus, more points, more gravitas towards that from the examiners in the marking.
I like it. Chris, you're up next. What are you changing?
We'd have to change fit and proper, because waving your wand around is not allowed. But if you were, then I think I would go right back to the beginning and change the entry process, because there's no actual teaching stuff in there at all. It is test focused from the beginning. The skills that you need in the modern world are just not there. The business skills aren't there. And everything's based on minimum standards of the minimum of the 40 hours for the pink badge, or, just passing the part 3, not being able to actually teach, and, get through the part 1 without reading any of the literature. Those things, I think we should change that and have an actual, a qualification fit for purpose, because then we'd improve the industry from the bottom up.
So I specifically didn't mention waving my wand about before I came to you, in the hope that, because I knew you would be the one person that picked up on it, or potentially for different reasons. But let's move on, because we've got Emma next. I'm not going to make magic wands anymore. What are you changing about the industry?
For me, it's the negative stuff. There seems to be more and more and more of it. I think we've lost a lot of our humanness in this industry. I think there's a lot of loss of empathy in this industry. And not a lot of us are seeing another person's viewpoint before we're opening our mouths, especially when social media is involved. So more sort of building each other up, more promotion of each other, more positivity, more collaboration, more working together so that we're not on our own, because all of us bring something different. You can see that even just from recording this, you're going to get different viewpoints, but we all collectively come together for a good reason. And I think as long as you're doing it with a positive connotation, coming together should be something that we're aiming for, rather than this separation and bitchiness.
We've lost our humanness as an industry. I'll tell you what, you'd better get that out on a post somewhere before I do, because I'm stealing that otherwise. Who's next?
Just you can do the post. Just make sure my name's in there.
I'll tag you in it, don't worry. Emma was here when I said this. Lee, you're next. What would you change about our industry?
I think if I had a magic wand, I'd try and change people's mindsets. I think my magic spell would make everyone want to strive for the highest standard possible. Kind of like what Chris said about everyone strives for the minimum standard. It'd make the DVSA rethink about whether 15 faults is that okay, really? Do we need to look at that? It'd remove that culture of PDIs wanting the minimum amount of training and wanting to scrape through part 3, and it'd remove that mindset of parents wanting to spend the minimum amount of money on their kids' lessons, and learners' mindsets of minimum lessons and minimum amount of training. And I think, in turn, that would help lower road deaths, because everyone would be thinking better from the top all the way down. And the best thing is, I don't think we need a magic wand to do that. We just need to be better.
I was just thinking maybe this is another one of those episodes needs to clip and send to the DVSA. Then I remembered the magic wand comments, so maybe not. Bob, you're up next. What would you change about the industry?
Sort of similar, but I'm gonna start with, we're kind of led from the top, and the people that are at the top are a shower of shit. So we're allowing that to filter down to us, and we're a little bit better than a shower of shit as an industry, and we need to be more professional, and we definitely need to be more collegiate. So just ask yourselves the question. Look at your last post on Facebook. Were you a dick? If you were, fucking pack it in. Jesus. There you go. Will that do?
I'm not sending it to the DVSA. I actually agree wholeheartedly with every comment made there. A lot of love in particular for Emma's. I know Graham Hooper said that what more collaboration, and what more collaboration can we get than this here with, as I say, 6 of the finest trainers in the whole wide world sharing some wise words, and then Bob sharing his interesting words as well.
Just drives me nuts. We all complain about it, yet we don't do anything about it. We allow ourselves to behave in this manner. We should just pack it in. We're supposed to be professionals. Jeez.
And you no longer have to make a decision about that audit badge, so you're fine.
No, stick it up the backside. I'm not going to renew.
We need to do that live. We're going to do Bob talking bollocks with Bob.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on to the next question quickly before we say something else. So again, this was sent in by Jamie Burns, and I've slightly reworded it to make it a question that you can all get stuck into a little bit more, which is, can sitting in on driving test influence the examiner's decision, and are there benefits to sitting in on the driving test? So can sitting in on driving test influence the examiner decision, and are there benefits to sitting in on test? And we're coming to you first with this one, Phil.
Definitely benefits. I think you, particularly if you're new in the industry, but I think the benefits anyway. I think you get to see how the examiners mark it and mark the test. I think you get to see how your pupils truly act when they're really independent for the first time, and also under that sort of pressure from the test. So yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say, yeah, I think it can affect the result, because examiners are human beings, and having someone in the back would probably make the market more to the book, and have less leeway that sometimes examiners might use because they don't want stories going around. But I think the positives outweigh any negatives that you might get.
In a one-word answer, good or bad, is to the book good or bad?
Good.
Okay. Chris, we're coming to you next. Can sitting in on tests influence examiners' decisions, and what are the benefits?
Can definitely influence their decisions. They're human. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. It can go either way. So, you know, I think you don't know. You've just got to make your judgment call and go with it. And probably there are more benefits. My biggest concern is always that actually we get swayed the wrong way by sitting in on tests, because they don't go down that road on tests, so it doesn't matter. Or you learn a test trick. The best thing that ever happened to me was when they changed the test, brought in the sat nav, and all the routes got changed because I could not know them anymore. And then you don't have that moment of weakness or that ability to necessarily, you know, have to make a choice as to whether you're going to be test focused or not. So I think there's some real dangers in there that we have to be aware of, but it's a good thing to do.
I like it. So next up, Emma, same question.
Sitting in, I think the positive is to truly see how your learner driver is in that scenario, because we can mock test them. We mock test as a team, so they've even got a different person sat next to them and all that type of stuff. But until they're in that environment of it being the real deal, we don't get to really see their true behavior, because we don't really get to see their true feelings and emotions as well. So if we're in the back, we get to see that in real time, which means if things don't go the way we wanted on that day, and we've got to go for a second attempt, there's element of support can be better in between. Does it affect the outcome if you're in the back? I'd like to say not, but the examiner is human. And I have had a recent experience lately that did make me go, if I wasn't here, would this have been a different result? So I have got to question it.
And Lee, you're up next. Can examiners sitting in the car influence a test, and what are the benefits?
I'd like to think it wouldn't, but it could, because, you know, like it's been said, it is kind of a human thing. That pair of eyes, they know you're watching their performance as well, I suppose. Is it a good thing? It depends if they like you, I suppose. If they don't like you, might they mark it harsher potentially? I don't know. I've no idea if it affects them or not. I think it's a great idea. It's something I've done for years, and I think it's something that the DVSA have warmed to. I remember the first time I had a test and I suggested it, they were sort of like, really? You know, why would you want to do that? And now it's kind of normal, which is great. And you're being paid to be there. So you should want to be there, and you should want to sit in, because, you know, it'll help you identify the cause of any issues, you know, if that led to failure, or if any issues, even if they do pass, if there's any issues, you know, you could potentially work on after the test. I think the biggest thing, it stops that kind of the examiner screwed me over thing. Because learners
First person to hit the buzzer, you're out of time. You don't. That's it.
Sorry. The next bit was really good, but never mind.
You can add it on to the next question. It's fine. Who have we got next? Bob. Bob, we're over to you.
I'd like to think it wouldn't affect it. I think back in the day when I was a lad, it probably would have done. But nowadays, they're supervised on such a regular basis that they're kind of used to it. But I think the biggest benefit from it is you see what actually happened and not somebody else's version of it. And I say that because I remember when I was fairly new, still a PDI, still on a training license, and I sent this girl to test 3 times in a row. She was great driving for me, and she came back with a pools coupon. There was crosses everywhere, and she was adamant she'd driven the way that I had trained her. So I sat in on the next test, and it was carnage. It was absolute carnage. And the examiner pulled me at the end and said, "Do you really think she's ready for a test?" That's not how she drives for me. So it's you get actual real life view of, oh, that happened. Oh, yeah, you did pull out in front of a car. No, I never. And, you don't have to deal with it. Well, the examiner filmed me because he didn't like me.
Oh, there's another one, look, in the timer. Neil, you're up next.
Yeah, I think it has its benefits, and I think the biggest benefit is what everybody said with you actually see a real pupil make real mistakes that are, not been made with you yourself. Does it work for us other than that? Not really. I don't see it influencing decisions. I tend to think that they have this thing about we should just sit there and not say anything or not look anywhere to try and influence the pupil. So for me, it's something that I don't like to do, but I know what the benefits are, obviously seeing that pupil make their mistakes. But overall, it's one of those, isn't it? It's you do it to sit in to see what happens at the start when you first start out in your career, and then you tend to wane away from it, don't you, really?
I am going to blame Lee and Bob for breaking my timer. I'm having to go to the stopwatch. I will just say, actually, the tests I've done this year and last, I see very, very few people go on tests at the minute. And I used to see more, but I barely see any now. I mean, full disclosure, I may hit and miss, but mainly because of my back. But yeah, it surprised me how many people don't go out on test. But either way, let's move on to the next question, because that one was sent in by Jamie Burns. We've got.
I think it's probably worth adding to that, Terry, that if you're new to the game, it will help you very quickly see what test standard actually is.
Yeah, I agree, and a good point to add.
It's lower than you think. If you haven't seen it before.
And then you know where to drive on all the test routes.
Well, that too.
Okay, so next question, and this is another wonderful human being, Terry Cook. I sent in another question. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made on a driving lesson or test? So what's the biggest mistake you've ever made on a driving lesson or test? A quick reminder, my timer seems to have broke, so you'll have to I'll just shout when it gets to 60. So, Chris, we're coming to you first on this one.
Oh, that's not fair because there's so many.
You can have a bonus few minutes for this. It's all right.
It's got to be. Well, it's when you forget something because of the way the process went. Someone went away and came back, and you are convinced that you've done it. You've even got records that say you've done it, but apparently you haven't. And one of them was actually sat nav, as in at all, and that was a problem. She melted. I was very apologetic. I still swear we did it, but anyway. Or I'm not big on the emergency stop. I teach stopping. That's, it's more important, I think. And then you just stop quickly if it's bad and not as quickly if it's not so bad. But then obviously there's the test emergency stop, which is a bit fake. So that's embarrassing if you drop the ball like that. So it's got to be one of those. And I've done loads. There's plenty. There's a big list. Someone's keeping track somewhere.
Fair enough. Is that one of the times you would have benefited from reading the question first?
That you came to me first on it, yes.
That's the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid. Emma, you're next on this one. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made on a driving lesson or test?
Mine was the control stop, emergency stop. Forgot, just completely didn't do it. I'm sat in the back of the test. So at the point that we pulled over and the examiner said it, I was like, we've not done it. I'm like going like this in the back of the chair. And yeah, so she kind of looked at the examiner, then looked at me in the rearview mirror, and I'm like, she pulled it out of the bag. It wasn't great, but she pulled it out of the bag, minimum standards. And when we got back to the test centre, she actually made comment that she'd never done it before. So that just made it even worse. And then when we got back to the test centre and I got out of the car, the examiner said, "Can I just have a word, Emma?" And I was like, oh. And I went over and he went, he used to be an instructor. And he went, "It's okay, we've all done that before." Thank God for that.
Did she pass?
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Lee, you're next. Biggest mistake?
Well, like Chris, I think it'd be quicker to tell you the mistakes I haven't made. But the one that sort of sticks in my mind is the one that when I failed my standards check, and I think it's the one that people that are watching this are going to benefit from the most, which is that kind of complete lack of anticipation. When I took a learner who's the following day he passed his test with no faults, he was really good, and the day before that I failed my standards check with him because he got too close to a parked car and I didn't react, and we didn't hit it, but I just froze, and I'd been an ADI for 9 years. So I think if he was someone that was off the nursery area to a main road area, I'd have been like a cat ready to pounce. So that was the mistake, was, always expect them to do it wrong and be surprised when they do it right.
And Bob, you're up next.
I've got a couple here and they're doozies. First one, I think I might have just been qualified. Teaching this kid to drive, fantastic. He just lapped it up. And on lesson 1, I always check their eyesight much further away than they would do normally. Blah, 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 blah. Got through, went to test day. Well, walking to the test centre, and I said to him, they'll ask you to read a number plate, probably about where that white car is. Mm-hmm. So you can read that, can't you? No. What about the red one? No. I said, but I've checked your eyesight before, and the car I asked you to read the number plate from was miles away. He went, how about I had my contact lenses in then? Shit. So we went in. Examiner comes out. Read that one. No. Read that one. No. Come with me. Come back out with the tape measure. Read that one. No. Test abandoned. And what I learned from that was when I went to the old boy who taught me to be an instructor, he said, every single bit of that's on you. So you can't charge them for the lesson you've just given them. You'll have to pay for a retest, and you'll have to give them those lessons for free. And at the time, I remember thinking, well, that's not fair. And when I was not fair? You're the dickhead who messed it all up. That's true.
Right.
But how many posts do you see of that nature? But the biggest one...
No, you've had a minute 50.
Oh, no, this one's a killer.
You can come back at the end with that, Bob. I'll let you come back. Right. I've got to stick to the rules. Otherwise, it's unfair. Neil, you're up next with the biggest mistake you've ever made on a driving lesson or test.
Yeah, the biggest one I ever made, and it took me by surprise because went to test, the pupil said, the examiner said, does a pupil want your instructor to come with you? I'd already agreed that I weren't going to go, and he said yes, so I had to go. Sat in the back, forgot to connect my phone or disconnect my phone from the car, thinking, it'll be all right, nobody will ring. Halfway round, the phone's ringing, and I'm trying to do all this. And I could see the examiner turning around, and I was thinking, oh, God. And it's a bit like, I got back to the test centre, and just like Emma, Neil, can I have a word? And I'm thinking, oh, my God. Luckily, the pupil passed, and he said, you don't know how close you come for me to abandon that test. But that taught me every time to disconnect my phone from the car.
Sorry.
Oh, there's some good ones here. Phil, can you top any of these?
So I struggle to narrow this down, but I remember going through a buses only section of the town once, and everyone giving me funny looks. That was not good. I remember teaching 2 sisters, and I had a big diary, and one of the sisters didn't want to know when her sister's she didn't want her sister to know when a test was, and I used to color code tests, and so when I was booking a sister in, she just saw the test, so that was a nightmare. The scariest one I've ever had, I unclipped my dual controls so that when we went on a family holiday, first lesson back after the holiday, guess when I remembered I needed my dual controls as we're approaching the roundabout? Shit my pants on that one. We survived. And then for a test day one, I remember taking to a pupil to test. Bear in mind, I book all my pupils' tests so that we don't make these sort of mistakes. And I took him to test on the day of the last day of cancellation. So I'd misread the email. Fortunately, that meant we were actually just 3 days early for the test. So we still had a test, but just an egg on my face when we turned up at the test center.
I think that I've just discovered a new podcast I'm going to do.
And Bob, that's how you fit in a number of stories in 1 minute.
I think I will just say here actually that I think it's great. It's something I've spoke about more over the past 6 months. So is people's failures, because I think a lot of people, when they see people that start with yourselves, or whether it's just someone that's a bit more public facing, they just see the shiny side. They don't always see that. And I know we did an episode on the premium recently. We did, Bob, about some of the struggles you've had. So, some really good feedback on that. I know that helped people talking about the problem. So I really appreciate you guys talking about your fails. And I'm actually going to chuck one of mine in here as well. And this goes right back to even before I was instructor. It goes right back to my driving test. Some of you may have heard this story, but on my driving test, my first ever driving test, I got in the wrong car. And I'm still not 100% sure how, but there were two cars parked next to each other. I couldn't work out which were mine because I'm panicking. Pressed to open it. First one open, it must be that one. Jumped in, and I'm behind wheel like this. And the examiner opened the door, and he went, "I think you're at the wrong car, but I think I am." So yeah, so we all make mistakes. So anyone watching, you're not alone if you make those mistakes. But yeah, Bob, we might come back to you at the end for that last one.
Right.
So let's move on then to the last question of the evening, which is sent in by Les Hopkinson. And a quick shout to Les Hopkinson first. I met him again for the ADI Walkback, which was another success. What a week it's been for the industry. We've had the ADI Walkback, we had the Driver Instructor Day, we've got this tonight, we've got the Instructor Podcast back tomorrow. Great week. But yeah, met Les, and great spending some time with Les, but I do want to mention he only seems to send questions in when he doesn't send them to me. Specifically, I want Chris to answer this, but not Terry. Then the questions I'm answering is sending them in tonight. So Les's question, and just a small one to finish on that you'll be able to answer quite quickly. 5 or 10 seconds on this, I'm expecting. What is the solution to the DVSA waiting times debacle? And you get to go first on this, Emma.
Wonderful. What a question to go first on. At this point, I'm not sure there is one. I think we've gone that far and they've took that long that we're that far deep in it. There's not many ways back now. I think the only rational one would be potentially to raise the test fee twofold, in the fact that might stop the let's just go and have a go people potentially. And I would like to think that extra money might go into actually paying the examiners better than what they get paid, which might then make a recruitment thing better. But I actually don't think that's going to help that much either.
No, so your solution is there is no solution.
Yeah, pretty much.
Probably not far wrong. Lee, you're up next. What's the solution to the DVSA waiting times debacle?
I mean, the DVSA, they get a lot of stick, but they can only work with what they're given. It's a bit like a lot of councils across the country. It's like until we get rolling right out of Downing Street and the Tories out, I think, and we stop trying to make people who are rich richer, then we can't give the DVSA more money to recruit new examiners. So give them more money, get more examiners in, pay them better so they're not so bloody miserable every day. More examiners, more test slots, lower waiting times.
Anyone that criticises the current government is okay in my book. Bob, do you want to tell us how we can solve waiting times? And feel free to take a pop at the Tories.
Well, no. I mean, I don't feel the need to do. I'll limit me. Fuck the Tories. There you go. That's enough of that. What the DVSA need to do is to stop behaving like a Victorian mill owner, chopping and changing people's terms and conditions without negotiation. Now, that's not the DVSA. That's government-led stuff. And it's not just this government. It's not just the Tories. The whole thing's a shower of shit in it, one putting in a bag and shaking. We can't go on the way we are. They haven't got enough examiners. That's the thing. If you want an easy solution to the waiting time, raise the test bloody age to 18. Bang, fixed overnight. But that's too logical. The whole thing needs looking at. It's a shoddy mess.
Shoddy mess. We're obviously all pulling us punches on this one. So Neil, what are we doing to fix test waiting times?
I don't see it changing. I can't see it changing. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think raising the price would do it that much, because more and more people just want to have a go wherever. They just get a test and they'll take it wherever. Putting it by postcode, per postcode, not sure. I just can't see an end to it. I think 6 months is 6 months, and it's just going to keep building. The more and more people turn 17, pass the theory test, and just keep booking a test, and it's just going to get further and further away especially after the 31st of March, if all the others return to their normal jobs. So I don't know.
I like it. And Phil, do you have any ideas that you can share to the DVSA?
So I was gonna say raise the price or change it to 18. But they've both been said. So what else could we do? How about a little bit like the standards check? And I don't like part 3, and I don't like this on the part 3, but screw it, let's go for it. So how about you only get 3 goes? And then I don't think 3 goes and you can never take it again. I think that's a bit harsh, but 3 goes and then maybe you have to wait a year before you can retake a test. And I think maybe that would make people take it a bit more seriously if they only get those 3 attempts, and then therefore less attempts. And then anybody who's doing lots of tests would have to wait and get more training, I'd hope.
I think there's something in that one. Maybe not 3 goals, but I think there's something you could play around with there potentially. I think that's a good shout. Chris, you're the man from the DIT, the representative that sends letters to Loveday Rider and gets us ever so constructive replies that are full of words of wisdom and hope. So how are we solving the DVSA waiting times debacle?
Well, yeah, I got the letter from Loveday, so I've just checked it for all the answers. It was nothing, so I'm still lost. So I said right at the beginning, move it to 18, solve the problem. There is no waiting list. Why? That was the solution. We missed it. Now I think instructors should have to have a qualification, so something like education and training or an assessors or something like that. And those instructors that do can assign off skills so that we can actually reduce down the number of tests and double the number that we're doing. And that would help. And you limit the area, as we proved on the podcast, based on DVSA figures, which are always accurate and true, that it would increase the pass rate because people would be nearer to their home, and apparently that makes a difference. And we would have solved it in a certain year or so. But working on the current figures, the DVSA reckon it's going to be a 3-year, until they get on top of things, and my figures say 20.
Excellent. Something to look forward to. Yeah, we did solve it with that, didn't we? That was interesting. But yeah, I wonder if that could be the instructor signing people off could be the first step in the graduated license system, so you can do some things.
Privatization.
Sign off. Yeah. Anyway.
They'd have to have the will to do it, but at the minute, they're swimming in money. They don't make a profit. They make an operating surplus that goes back to the treasury. So while they're raking all this money in, they're not really hungry for change, are they?
Well, let's put a pin in that, because it's been a really positive episode, and we don't want to be too negative with the last one, because, we've all said nice things about DVSA then. So let's come with this one. Does anyone want 60 seconds to come back and anything? Bob?
Yeah. Right. Picture the scene, 1973. The motorcycle test was a very different thing then. A man with a clipboard stood on a street corner and said, just keep turning right till I flag you down. Then just keep turning left. And on my motorcycle test, I fell off. Yeah, myself. Oh, got up, straightened the handlebars out, bent the indicator straight run, and I passed. Unbelievable. There you go. That's it.
When you said set the scene, I thought, all right, okay, settle for a bit.
When I were lad, no.
Does anyone else want a minute to come back in at Chris? You're pretty keen.
No, I've got a story about a failure on a driving test. And it was that the phone, Neil reminded me, the phone kept going off. The examiner kept looking back at me, and the phone would go off again. The examiner kept look back at me, and he pulled the car over and he said, if the phone goes off again, then I'm going to terminate the test. And I said, well, then you should probably go in your pocket and turn it off then, because it's not my phone. They passed.
Did you drop the microphone at that point?
It was a lovely moment. It was, yeah. And I know him well, which made it even sweeter.
I was witness to a phone once. We were stood outside, me and another instructor, waiting for test to come back. He was getting close to the end of test time. And he'd gone out 5 minutes before because his phone was ringing. And he was answering to his now ex-wife. They weren't at the time. And she was ranting and raving down the phone at him. I could hear from the other side of the car park this woman screaming down the phone at this poor guy on the car park. And the next minute, his car came round the corner, it automatically connected to the car. And this woman telling him to fuck off down the phone went through the car. I was like, oh. I went red for him.
we should do a driving instructor confessions podcast or something. It'd be good.
That'll be really good.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about phones a lot, haven't we? So it seems appropriate. Oh dear, Mac for edit. Does anyone else want to have a minute to discuss anything we've covered so far? Lee, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just again, what happened on a test. I once took a pen into the test because we got there late. We were like literally 30 seconds kind of, we got there and we ran in, or the learner ran into the test center. And I ran in, I took my pen with me. And I had it in my hand for some reason all the way in the waiting room, and I brought it back into the car with me. And about 10 minutes into the test center, I must have been clicking it I was a bit nervous. And the examiner asked the learner to park up at the side of the road, and he turned around to me and he said, can we have a word outside? And he said, when you click your pen, what are you telling your learner? And it was like some sort of secret code and stuff. And I was like, no, honestly, no, it's not me. Honestly, I'm not doing anything wrong. And he took my pen off me, he confiscated it. Like a teacher. And then the following week, I went back and I had the same examiner. And he forgot to do the maneuver. And we got back to the test center and we parked in, and he went, can you reverse into this space? I'm like, you forgot. And he didn't admit it.
I'd have found a pen and clicked it.
Phil, Neil, anything you guys want to come back on?
I've got one where it wasn't my student, but we've sat there waiting in the test centre, and you could tell this instructor had said to their pupil, every time somebody speaks, check your mirrors. So he's coming, the examiner comes in, calls his name, and he's like that. Yeah. And every time he says something like that, all the way down the stairs outside, he's speed that car number plate over there. Yeah, yeah. It was so fixed. It was unbelievable.
I've never seen people as quick to tell these stories. It's great. Phil, ever you want to chip in with anything or...
I'll tag on to the phone connection stories. It wasn't on a test. It was I'd just finished a PDI session sitting in the back of a lesson, and it was an instructor's car who it is I own the car, so I previously had driven it and previously connected my Bluetooth to this car. And then I'm on the way out chatting to another instructor on a phone call, and I drove up behind the car, obviously hands-free. I drove up behind the other instructor's car, and my phone changed connection. So now my other instructor was now in their lesson having a conversation, and I couldn't get him back until they drove off at the traffic light. And then I had to hold back for the rest of the drive just to stop him reconnecting with them.
Well, I'll tell you what, seeing as we're doing the phone connection stories, I may as well tell mine. As some of you may be aware, I am back on the prowl at the minute. Yes, so stay back, but a friend of mine who will remain nameless, but he's not on this call, sent me an audiobook about dating, because I haven't dated for about 14 years and it scares the bejesus out of me. So while the students are on test, I started listening to this. I'm like, oh, this is just nonsense talking about, look, no, right, done, 2 minutes in, stopped it. The student pulls back up, doesn't turn the engine off properly. When the examiner opens the door, gets to his phone, connects to the radio and starts playing, talking about, and it was like really soppy. It's like, and you'll be in love forever. Oh, okay. So I think that's a good opportunity to wrap up. So Lee, take a moment. You've got 60 seconds to tell us why you are awesome. And please do tell us why you're awesome and where people can find you.
Well, I run a nationwide one-to-one online training on Zoom. I'm awesome because I launched ADI PDI Doctor 108 weeks ago, and I've had 155 people pass Part 3 or standards check since. I offer simple, affordable, common sense training to whoever wants it. I'll help people understand the job in hand, and that will help them see things clearer, which in turn helps them make things easier, makes the exams easier, I suppose. And who doesn't want that? You can find me at adidoctor.co.uk or pdidoctor.co.uk.
Simple, affordable, common sense training. There's your tagline. That's all you need. Bob, why are you awesome? Where can people find you?
Why am I awesome? Because my mom always said I was. I'm available at bob@clientcenteredlearning.co.uk. I'm about to launch a new coaching course, which is designed to fit driving instructors. I'll meet you where you are now, and we'll get you to where you want to be. So that, and I'm opening up my diary for some one-to-one Zoom stuff, but that's fairly limited because I'm semi-retired.
And I know we've had a little bit of a chat about that, your coaching course, and that sounds very interesting. We will say no more. We'll like tease people with that snippet, Bob. Neil, why are you awesome, and where can people find you?
Why am I awesome? I wrote a book, Untwisting the Road to Success, that's doing really, really well. And everybody can either find me on Facebook or at the Audit Academy. And I do other stuff as well, by safeguarding, but mainly they can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and my website.
I am really annoyed that I haven't put your book there. Instead, I put Coaching is Chaos, because it amused me. Phil, you're up next. Why are you awesome, and where can people find you?
I'm awesome because I had the sense to partner up with Diana Todd and my better half on Inspire Instructor Training. And yeah, so you can find us at inspireinstructortraining.com or on Facebook or in Facebook groups. We have a mentorship package, so you come and join, and you have access to our Zooms and online courses, and then just access to us to help and support you become the best instructor you can be. We're also going on tour starting in May with our workshop, which is called We're Only Human, and it's all about dealing with the person next to you and not the faults on the driving test. So it's all based around sort of kind of how we can do that in the car.
I am intrigued to see how you manage that. I think it's Livingston to Leeds run one day to the next. That's going to be challenging. But I am a dick, so I'm going to ask you, why are you awesome?
I'm awesome. Oh, nearly got away with that. Because I invest in myself. CPD.
I'll take that. Because I do think people that invest in themselves are awesome. So, Chris, why are you awesome? Where can people find you?
Because I managed to get lots of driving instructors out of their cars and wandering around out in woods and stuff, and I think that's really cool because it was a silly idea that just why not, basically. And I like those, and that's kind of what I do. So I'm normally the one that comes up with the silly idea and chucks it out there to see who's going to grab it and run with it and where we can go without necessarily worrying about why. It's just, if it seems like a good idea, let's do it. So I do theory training in the same approach of, let's ignore the test and actually try and get people understanding stuff. I've got a grade A course, which is 2 hours for the standards check or part 3, which is the same approach of going, right, sod the test, forget the 17 competencies, because they're a load of rubbish. They're nothing to do with us. They're the DVSAs. And I can help you, understand what you're actually supposed to be doing every lesson, not just that big one that you're choosing to focus on. And then I answer questions that other people don't know the answer to, or I send them to people like the ones in this room.
Last but by no means least, Emma Cottington, your favourite question, I'm fully aware. Why are you awesome, and where can people find you?
I'm going to give you the same answer as I always do. I'm awesome because you say I am. But I am starting to believe it myself now, which is good. We are on the up with it. So people can find me on Facebook. My biggest goal is to bring our humanness back to the industry. And I'm going to start to bridge that gap by helping people to find themselves from a mental health perspective. It's a really lonely industry at times, and I want to be the person who stops that loneliness so that we can all be awesome. So that's my biggest goal this year.
I have 2 highlights from this year so far. One is the Taylor Swift video that I did, which is, it's not getting topped, I'm sorry. And the second is when we recorded our episode, and afterwards you said, I did that, I enjoyed that, we're good there. It's like, yes, you've said something, so that's good. So a big thank you for you guys for joining me. I want to take a mention now. We've had sort of 20 to 30 people on throughout this, kind of chopping out. If you are still watching this, or if you come back and watch it on the replay or anything, I am asking you a big, big favour. It wasn't planned this week, it's fallen coincidentally, but it is the Instructor podcast release date tomorrow for season 7. Please share the episode for 2 reasons. One, I want to grow it. I want to get the road safety message that I'm doing on it out to more people. Great feedback on this first episode. So please, please, please share it, whether you share it in your WhatsApp group, social media, or to your mates down the test center or whatever. Please share it. I cannot stress enough how much I would appreciate that. And secondly, as a thank you, we put this event on for you for free. You've gained loads of like 6 talk nonsense for an hour. So go and say thank you by sharing the podcast. But big thank you to you guys for watching. Big thank you to you guys for taking part of the ADI Avengers, 6 of the most, finest and worldly wise. And I'm currently filling time as I try to remember I stopped going live again. There we go. ADI Avengers in the whole world. Bye.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook. Talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.